I always get a lot of pushback when I recommend renters take the 2-year renewal on their rent stabilized apartments. People are always like, but the 1 year is cheaper, or you could do this, or I think the vote's gonna be this a year from now, so I'm gonna do 1 year, then a 2-year, or 1 year and a 1 year. But let's break it down. This is why you should choose the 2-year every single time. So I'm gonna go to OpenIgloo's rent stabilized calculator and see what is better. Doing a 1 year this year and a 1 year next year, or a 1 year this year and a 2 year next year, or a 2 year this year. Okay, so let's just say your rent is $1,000 right now and your lease is expiring at the end of July. So I'm gonna put in the end date. This matters because the new vote that just passed in June doesn't go into effect for leases that are renewing before October 1st. So you're paying $1,000 right now, your lease ends July 31st, and you're gonna renew for 2 years. So I'm gonna select 2 years. So your rent in year 1 is gonna be $1,027.50, and your rent in year 2 is gonna be $1,060.38. Okay, so instead of choosing the 2 year, what if you just chose the 1 year? If you choose the 1 year, your rent is gonna go up to $1,030. So already off the bat, if you choose the 2 year, your rent is gonna be less in year 1 than it would be in year 1 if you just chose the 1 year. So that's number 1. Okay, but maybe you'll make up the difference, right? So let's just keep with this 1 year, you're paying $1,030. Now imagine next year comes around. Your rent is $1,030, but instead of renewing July 24th, you're renewing July 2025, and you're selecting the 1 year again. So your rent goes up to $1,058.33 because your starting rent is $1,030. Okay, but what if you do the 2 year instead? Then your rent is gonna go up to $1,084.08. Whereas in the first scenario where you selected the 2 year in 2024, your rent would be $1,060.38 in year 2, where in this case, your rent would be $1,084 in year 2, if that makes sense. So listen, doing the 2 year this summer versus doing a 1 year and a 1 year, it's very, very close, but you do save $5.40, assuming you're paying $1,000 a month, if you choose the 2 year instead of doing a 1 year and a 1 year. If you choose a 1 year this year and then you opt to do a 2 year next year, you lose $314.40, assuming you start off at $1,000, compared to if you just selected the 2 year this summer. I'm not saying the math is always gonna work out where you're saving money choosing the 2 year, but I've just looked at hundreds of DHCR rental histories, and renters who select the 2 year every single time over the long term fare better. They end up with a lower rent in the long term. The math doesn't lie, but if you want to play around with our calculator, test your own rent, test your own scenarios, the link is in our bio.